We record this on Facebook Live, by the way, so just so you know, you can always see us there. And I like to do something a little cute at the beginning of my talk, and this one I found. It's called The Usher. An elderly woman walked into the local country church. The friendly usher greeted her at the door and helped her up the flight of stairs. "Where would you like to sit?" he asked politely. "The front row, please," she answered. "You really don't want to do that," the usher said. "The pastor is really boring." "Oh, do you happen to know who I am?" the woman inquired. "No," he said. "I'm the pastor's mother," she replied indignantly. And he said, "Do you know who I am?" he asked. She says, "No." He said, "Good." Okay, so yes, we all have those moments, don't we? Well, when I thought of this, or I don't know, I'm going to say it's a given, accept your unlimited possibilities. We talk about that a lot in Science of Mind, but I always am looking and being guided to things that inspire me. And one of the things that I love to do is watch the master class on Oprah. Do you ever watch that? It's where she has famous people talk about their lives and about how they were inspired in order to move forward in their lives. And, one of the things that we do here is that we'll vision and we'll pray, and we use prayer as our tool in order to create what we want in our lives. Well, the one that I was guided to was on Tyler Perry. Y'all know who Tyler Perry is?
Oh, yeah.
Medea? Okay. Well, I don't know if you know about his life, so I want to share a little bit about it, because his life is really, inspiration, and I was getting tears in my eyes because, he had a very tough life, and he came from a place where his father would constantly, physically, mentally, and emotionally abuse him. And then he was abused sexually as well, and so he grew up with that. And he was never inspired, and he was never given any kind of, I'm going to say, you're great. He was never given any of that. He was never given anything to help him to feel good about himself. And so what happened is he eventually said, well, I think I'm going to become an architect. And I thought, wow, with that background, this kid was born with some kind of resilience, really. But he said what ended up happening is that he would watch Oprah. And he would come home from high school, and Oprah said, well, if you really, really want to get out some angst and get out all the stuff that you need to get out, then you need to write it down and just purge it that way. And he said, oh, Oprah, she was black like me. And I said, well, there's a woman on TV that's succeeding and she's my color? Whoa, I'm loving it. So he would run home every day after school to watch Oprah at 3 o'clock. And so that's how he started. So he started writing, and he started writing and writing and writing. Pretty soon he came up with a play. And so as he got older, he said, I'm not going to be an architect. This must be God guiding me to become a writer and to do what I need to do for my life. And that play became a play where he eventually moved to another city. And he put all of his money, he had been working at different jobs, and he did all of that in order to put on this play at a playhouse. And he said, oh, God brought me here, and I know I'm going to make it, and I'm going to have, people out the door. So the first night, instead of 100 people, he had 30, which I thought was pretty good for a brand new playwright, right?
Yeah.
And but he said, oh, that wasn't enough, and then he had to go get another job because he lost all his money renting the playhouse and doing all of that. So he was raised by a family where he came from a family of deacons and preachers, and they were all about church, and they were all about going to God and teaching about the Word of God. And he said he had an uncle that was a pastor, and he always would say, that if you just pray hard enough, if you just believe enough, God will give you what you need, and God will give you all the answers. And he said, so I was praying and praying, and he said, and I just kept going, and then I'd go to a job, and I'd say, I really have to do this play, and they'd say, well, you can't do that. You just got this job. And the voice within said, you need to quit the job and go do your play. So 7 years later, he said he finally had a break. And they took him to the House of Blues to do his play. And he said, oh, this probably isn't going to work either. But I'm just going to trust. And the voice says, just be quiet and just allow. And so he did. And when he did that, he looked outside the window, and it was lines around the block to get in to see his play. And that was the beginning of his success and the beginning of what he felt was his answered prayer. But when he was a little kid, when he was developing his trust and faith, and we all have to develop our trust and faith. How many of you totally have trust and faith that everything's going to be great and it's going to work to your favor? You believe it? And if you don't, we develop it over a period of time through the things that we have happened in our life. And for him, it's interesting because he said when he was a little boy, he said, well, they're telling me, all you got to do is pray and God will give it to you. And so he prayed that he wanted to see the little people in the TV because he thought they lived in the TV. And that, there were little miniature people that behind the screen, if you opened up the screen, those little people would come out. Isn't that cute? And he goes, that's what kids do. And so anyway, what happened is that he eventually got, he didn't get little people, but the neighbor gave him 2 little parrots that talked because they were moving. So he got his little people in the form of birds. And it was very cute. But he said, to me, that developed my trust and that developed my faith. And I love that, And as I'm listening to it, he said every time he's been through hard times and difficult times in his life, he goes to the Rock. And I call it the Rock too because if you ever saw The Preacher's Wife with Whitney Houston, did anybody ever see that movie? It's one of my favorite movies of all time because that's when she was at her prime and singing, and it was gorgeous. She has a song in there. It's not in the movie, but it's on the soundtrack, and it's called I Go to the Rock. And whenever I have, I'm crying and crawling and praying, I go to the Rock. And the Rock is really spirit, and the Rock is God. And the Rock is knowing that you have a solid foundation in that no matter what, you can go there in prayer, and it's going to happen. It's going to come back to you, and it's going to give you what you need and what you desire. But what Tyler Perry talked about is that, with his adversity and with what happened to him, he said, I'm grateful that happened to me because it gave me the strength in order to move forward, in order to keep going no matter what happened to me. And when I heard that, I said, yeah, because if we're given things too easily, think about it. It would be kind of nice to win the lotto. But if you are having an issue and you are having to move through it, then what happens is that through that adversity, we get the strength and the courage in order to continue to move forward, right? And that's what it's all about. So he said his mom's strength was the role that he used. Because through all the beatings, through all the abuse, both of them kept persevering. And they would go to church every Sunday. And she would cry at church just in gratitude that she had a loving God that honored her and loved her. Through all of this, she still held her faith and her belief. And that's really what it was about. So, when we have when we have our adversity, it's a way for us to move forward. And I know in my life, and I'm sure think about in your life, you have to go deep into yourself in order to move into that level of trust and faith. And I remember one story of mine where I was working with a company and there were people that were very wealthy and they were coming after me, and I just prayed and knew that everything would work out, and it did. Because there's always a way for God to give us what we need and what we desire in our lives. Recently, Roxy and I had a vision, and I was talking to George and EJ during service one day, and I said, what my vision is? It would be really great to rent out every single square inch of this place. So within about 2 weeks, that's exactly what's happened. And we have people calling us, and this was just a little statement I put out to the universe. So what I'm saying is that when we have that statement and we put that out in the universe, remember you said that earlier today, here's what I want as my goal, here's what I want as my possibility, I'm going to go to Harvard. Believe me, that's going to happen for you. Because as we put that truth out there, all of these things start to manifest. But we have to have that trust and faith. I was reading Neville, and he wrote a book called The Power of Awareness. And I didn't know who he was, but it says, spanning from the 1930s to the 70s, he was a spiritual thinker of modern history. And he wrote under the pen name Neville. And he did these spiritual teachings, and they were published in 1952. But what he talks about in here, and I just read this one little line, he said, that which requires a state of consciousness to produce its effect obviously cannot be affected without a state of consciousness and in your ability to assume the feeling of a greater life. And so simply said, to assume a new concept of yourself, you possess the rest of nature, that what the rest of nature does not possess, imagination, the instrument by which you create your world. So as we were reading a little bit earlier about complaining and about what we desire in our lives, it's about letting go of the past and letting go of the people that have transgressed against us. The other thing that Tyler was talking about is through all that, can you imagine somebody who beat you silly, and one time he beat him so bad that he was unconscious for 3 days.
Wow.
Now, he was able to take that experience, and he said, if I don't do forgiveness, then I am going to, and Joanne knows all about this, if I don't forgive, then I'm going to have this angst and this horrible feeling within me the rest of my life, and it's almost like a poison that's going to continue to move in and through my body. And so as he forgave, he didn't forget, and he was very clear about that. But his mother on her deathbed said, promise me that you will continue to take care of your father. Okay? And he's like, okay, I promise Mama. And he is still. But he said what his dad gave them, because he was a functioning alcoholic, was the food and a roof over their head, not much else. And he said that's all he's given his dad, but he's not giving him the relationship, because he never got that from his father. But he was able to let go enough to have that happen. And the things that he said is that it's good to have the rage, it's good to have all of the things that, you know, we feel in our body. And right now there's a time in our lives where all the things are bubbling up that we haven't really connected to. And I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but things that have been buried deep down inside of us. And one of the things that he said, and these are the 3 things I wrote down after listening to this hour of him giving the interview. He said, for one, do never, ever give up. Never give up. You want to dance again, you want to write, you want to do whatever it is, don't ever, ever give up. Because that feeling of just pushing you forward is going to give you a purpose in life. And it's God really allowing us to feel our soul's purpose. So when he took 7 years to get that play off the ground, which really isn't that long, some people never make it. So in my book, you know, he was very successful. But he also had to forgive the past in order to heal all of the wounds that have come up. And he said he's on a continuous process of healing. And all of his plays and his TV shows and all those things, that's the way that he's been able to heal himself. And so he's been able to let go of it and move forward. And the other thing he said was, no matter what, and he's the head of his own production company, he has a studio and all of that. And he said, I just know that God's always there as my partner. I know that I have this beloved that's always taking care of me. And it's so beautiful. And he's so spiritual. It's amazing. And then the last thing he said is to sit in the seat of gratitude. And when you sit in a seat of gratitude, what's the feeling, vibration that come up? We talked about earlier, and this is the teachings of Abraham. If you complain, you're going to get more complaints. If you're grateful, what's going to happen? We get more gratitude. We have more of that feeling come to us. And then we're able to have, be, and do whatever we desire. And so the last thing I wanted to do is take, because one of the practitioners, we were sitting at lunch last week, and she said the thing that we have here that is the most important tool is that we have prayer treatment. And yes, we have it in, you're familiar with religious science and also Christian science. And really, Ernest Holmes got the prayer treatment from Christian science. But I thought today, what empowers us and what has God come to us and has us have the ability to have our desires manifest and to have all of the unlimited possibilities in our life is to have the feeling of self-love, the feeling of, I am so fabulous. Because when we have that feeling, we attract all good things to us. And it's incredible. So I wanted to do a quick prayer treatment with you today to close out. Would you like that?
Yeah.
Because when we love and honor ourselves, and I know, for our young men over there, yes, that for you guys, seriously, no matter what anybody says to you, if we love and honor ourselves, if we are so solid in who we are, nothing outside of us can ever shake us. And that's when we go to prayer. That's when we go to the rock. That's when we go to that space of, you know what? God, I am here. I got God behind me. And when I have those millionaires coming after me and trying to sue me, I was praying my little patootie off. Because that is what happened. And supernaturally, all the things that needed to line up in order for me to have that become successful happened. And I'm still to this day go, whoa, that was pretty amazing. And so all we have to do is step into that place, and it's so simple. So why don't we, and you can add to this, I'm just going to throw one out there real fast, okay? So what we're going to close with is a treatment, which is the most powerful tool that we have in this teaching. So we say together, we connect to spirit. And as we say that, we acknowledge there's only one power, one presence. You can say universe, God. You can say Steve, I don't care. Because it's that energy that is attracting, and we know that there's something creating around us. Yes, we all believe that. We see it, it's in nature, we see it, we feel it. Our heart is beating because we are connected and tapped in. So there is one power, one presence. I know that there is one God. There is one God. There is one God, one life, one power. You want to say that? There is one God, one power, one presence. Okay? And I am connected. I am one with the divine. I am connected. I am one with the divine. Okay, here's the meat of it. We're doing the affirmations, and the affirmation part of the prayer treatment is called realization. Okay? That's where your unlimited possibilities come up. And in that regard, we're going to say, I completely love and accept myself. I completely love and accept myself. I am wisdom in manifest form. I am wisdom in manifest form. I let go of the past.
I let go of the past.
And I am healed from anything that has ever blocked me. And I am healed from anything that has ever blocked me. I accept unlimited possibilities in my life. I accept unlimited possibilities in my life. Oh, I am so adored. I am so adored. I am so fantastic. I am so fantastic. And as I speak this truth, I know that the law is acknowledging all that I say. And I know that the law is acknowledging all that I say. I feel it,
I feel it,
I claim it,
I claim it,
and I accept it. And so it is. All right, so thank you, beloved ones. Use that this week, and I guarantee you, you're going to have some shift in your life. Thank you so much.